You've been told, just give them space. And so you do. You back off, wait patiently, hold your breath, hoping that the more distance you allow, the closer your avoidant partner will eventually feel to you. But what if I told you that advice might be backfiring? Hey there, I'm Jim Rohn. And if you've ever found yourself shrinking your needs, silencing your voice, or waiting endlessly for your avoidant partner to come around, this video is for you. Here's the truth: no one tells you space alone doesn't build connection. And for many anxious or emotionally available people, over-accommodating an avoidant partner's distance actually creates more disconnection, not less. You end up walking on eggshells, hoping your silence will somehow earn their love. But it doesn't work that way. In today's video, we're going to break down exactly why giving unlimited space to an avoidant partner doesn't create intimacy and what you should be doing instead. I'll walk you through the psychology behind avoidant withdrawal, the importance of emotional rituals, and how to communicate your needs without triggering their defenses or abandoning yourself. If you've ever felt like the more you back off, the more invisible you become, don't miss this. Because real connection isn't about disappearing for love. It's about showing up with clarity, boundaries, and self-respect, and creating the kind of relationship where both people can grow. So if you're ready to stop feeling powerless and start reconnecting with confidence, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell so you don't miss a thing. And let's dive into what actually works when loving an avoidant partner without losing yourself in the process. One of the biggest misunderstandings when it comes to relationships with avoidantly attached partners is the idea that giving them unlimited space will eventually lead to closeness. And while space can be necessary, it's not a magic solution. In fact, when overused or given without intention, it can do the opposite of what you're hoping for. It can reinforce emotional distance, create resentment, and make you feel like you're disappearing in your own relationship. Let's start with the first and most critical point. You must set a time-limited investment. That means getting really honest with yourself about how long you're willing to stay in a relationship where your emotional needs aren't being acknowledged, met, or even discussed. Not from a place of punishment or control, but from a place of self-respect. Here's what I mean. Imagine someone named Megan. She's been dating an avoidant partner for almost a year. Every time they start to get close, he withdraws. He stops texting as much, avoids deeper conversations, and disappears emotionally for days. Megan, trying to be understanding, pulls back too. She tells herself, if I just give him space, he'll feel safe enough to come back. And sometimes he does, but nothing changes. No new conversations, no deeper connection, just a temporary reconnection before the cycle starts again. Now Megan's exhausted. She's confused. She's anxious all the time, wondering if she's doing something wrong, or if she just needs to be more patient. But what Megan doesn't realize is this: she's holding up 100% of the emotional effort. She's waiting, hoping, managing her feelings alone, and ignoring the fact that love is not something you earn by disappearing. It's something that's built together mutually. This is where the idea of your 50% comes in. You are not responsible for managing your partner's fear of intimacy. You are not responsible for carrying the emotional weight of the entire relationship while they stay in avoidance. You are, however, responsible for showing up fully, expressing your needs clearly, and holding your own boundaries. That's your 50%. Their 50% is engaging, communicating, and meeting you halfway. And when that balance is missing, when you're investing, accommodating, and waiting while they're avoiding, withdrawing, and staying emotionally unavailable, you need to check in with yourself and ask, how long am I willing to stay in this pattern? What's the cost to my peace? Am I honoring my own needs or just hoping they'll eventually notice them? Setting a time-limited investment doesn't mean giving ultimatums. It means saying to yourself, I will give this relationship space to grow, but only if I see signs of movement, participation, and effort on both sides. If I don't, I will lovingly step away, not to punish them, but to protect my own emotional well-being. This kind of clarity is powerful. It shifts you out of the role of emotional caretaker and back into your own grounded center. It reminds you that you don't have to wait endlessly for someone to change while you wither in silence. And ironically, this kind of calm, firm energy is often what causes avoidant partners to finally feel safe enough to show up, not because you chased, but because you stopped over-functioning. The key takeaway: you're allowed to want connection. You're allowed to say, this isn't enough for me, without guilt. And you're allowed to give space with structure, space that has boundaries, intention, and a clear limit. Because love without direction becomes limbo, and you deserve more than that. When you define your investment, you reclaim your power. And that's where real intimacy begins, not in waiting, but in choosing yourself while staying open to the right kind of love. Let's talk about something that isn't said enough when it comes to relationships with avoidantly attached partners. Space doesn't build connection, structure does. And if you're constantly pulling back to avoid pressuring your partner, you may accidentally be reinforcing their avoidance, not helping them move through it. That brings us to the second core shift: balance space with emotional rituals. Giving space is important, but it only works within the context of emotional safety and interdependence. Interdependence is not clingy, and it's not codependent. It's the healthy middle ground where both people feel like they matter, where space is respected but connection is protected. And the best way to protect connection, especially with someone who fears intimacy, is to create consistent emotional rituals that keep the relationship grounded. Let me show you what this looks like. Take Nicole and her partner, James. James is a classic avoidant, independent, values his alone time, shuts down when things get too emotional. Nicole, on the other hand, has an anxious leaning. She values closeness, check-ins, and regular connection. In the beginning of their relationship, things felt exciting but unpredictable. James would go silent for days and Nicole would spiral, wondering if she said something wrong or if he was losing interest. Then he'd reappear like nothing happened. That roller coaster was draining. So they had a conversation, not a confrontation, but a calm, intentional discussion. Nicole said, "I understand you need space, and I want to honor that. But I also need consistency to feel emotionally safe. Can we find a rhythm that works for both of us?" From there, they created a simple agreement: a short phone call every evening after work, a weekly date night, and one solo day per weekend where they'd each have alone time. That structure gave James the space he needed without leaving Nicole emotionally disconnected. More importantly, it gave their relationship a container, something atado and intentional. This is what emotional rituals look like. They aren't rigid rules. They're gentle anchors that help both people stay connected, even when space is needed. Maybe for you, that's a morning good morning text, a check-in every Sunday night, or a shared coffee ritual. The actual ritual doesn't matter as much as the intention behind it. We are choosing to stay connected on purpose. Because here's what avoidants often don't realize: space without structure can feel like emotional abandonment to their partner. And over time, that leads to resentment, unmet needs, and the dreaded walking on eggshells dynamic. You start censoring yourself. You stop asking for what you need. You begin to feel like your desires for closeness are a problem, and that's when emotional self-betrayal creeps in. But when you balance space with consistent connection, you rewire that fear on both sides. You show the avoidant partner you can have autonomy and intimacy, and you remind yourself, I don't have to disappear to keep the peace. Now, this doesn't mean your partner has to suddenly become hyper-affectionate or start texting every hour. That would be overwhelming for someone with an avoidant nervous system. The goal here is mutual safety, not forcing closeness. That safety is built not by doing more, but by doing the right things with clarity and consistency. So how do you start? Have the conversation, not in a moment of panic, but from calm. You might say, I really value this relationship and I want us both to feel comfortable in it. I know you need your space, and I need a bit more consistency. Would you be open to finding a middle ground, like a weekly check-in or a set day for quality time? Watch their response. If they're avoidant but open, they'll likely appreciate your grounded approach. You're not accusing, you're not begging, you're expressing a need clearly, which is exactly what avoidant partners actually benefit from, even if they don't always know how to ask for it. If they react defensively or shut down, that's information. And it's important not to personalize that. Remember, you're not asking for too much by asking for connection. You're asking for partnership. And if they're not willing to meet you partway, that tells you something crucial. The space you're giving isn't making room for closeness, it's making room for avoidance to take over. Ultimately, healthy space supports growth. It doesn't excuse emotional withdrawal or silence. It's not a hall pass to ignore connection. It's a way to enhance it by allowing two individuals to be themselves, while still showing up for each other intentionally. So if you've been giving your partner more and more space, but feeling further and further apart, it's time to rethink the strategy. Add structure. Establish emotional rituals. Give them space, yes, but wrap that space in love, clarity, and consistency. Because relationships thrive not in the extreme of constant closeness or total independence, but in the rhythm of mutual respect, predictable care, and emotional safety. And that, truly, is the kind of love that helps avoidance soften, not run. When you're in a relationship with someone who leans avoidant, communication becomes even more important. but it also becomes trickier. Avoidant individuals often have a low threshold for emotional intensity, and when they perceive demands, criticism, or pressure, their defense system kicks in. They don't hear your need, they hear a threat. That's why learning to use positive framing when expressing your needs is one of the most effective ways to foster connection without triggering shutdown. Let's talk about what this looks like in practice. Imagine you're feeling disconnected from your partner. You haven't had a real conversation in days. Maybe they've been busy, distracted, or just emotionally distant. You miss them. You feel a growing ache, a longing to reconnect. But when you bring it up, you say, "You never make time for me anymore. I feel like I don't even matter." Now your feelings are valid, but the way that message lands on your avoidant partner, it might feel like a personal attack. Their mind might instantly start scanning for escape routes. I'm not enough. I can't make her happy. I'm failing again. And then comes the shutdown. More avoidance, less connection. You end up reinforcing the very pattern you're trying to change. Now let's try positive framing. I've really missed spending time with you. It means a lot to me when we connect, even if it's just a quiet evening together. Could we plan something this week, just us? See the difference. The message is still about your need. You're still expressing a desire for connection, but the delivery isn't accusatory or emotionally charged. It's an invitation, not a demand. Here's the truth: avoidant partners often do want to meet your needs, but they need to feel safe enough to try. And that safety is created when you express your needs in a way that's calm, clear, and emotionally grounded. This doesn't mean you sugarcoat everything. You're not walking on eggshells. You're communicating with emotional intelligence and self-respect. You're saying, "My needs matter, and I trust you enough to express them with kindness." Let's look at a few more examples of how to shift common anxious statements into positive requests. Don't say, "You never say how you feel about me." Instead say, "I love when you share your thoughts. It helps me feel closer to you. I'd really like to hear what's been on your mind lately." Don't say, "You always pull away when we get close." Instead say, "I've noticed we feel a little more distant lately, and I'd love to reconnect in a way that feels comfortable for both of us." Don't say, "I'm tired of being the only one who tries." Instead say, "Connection is really important to me, and it means a lot when we both invest in keeping that alive. What would feel manageable for you this week?" You're not erasing your feelings. You're guiding the conversation toward closeness rather than pushing your partner into a defensive corner. This is especially important with avoidance because they interpret emotional intensity as danger, not because you're being too much, but because they have a low tolerance for perceived vulnerability or need. Another tip: keep your tone neutral, not cold, just calm. Avoid bringing things up when you're already flooded with emotion. Instead, regulate yourself. First, take a walk, breathe deeply, write out what you want to say, and then come back to the conversation with emotional steadiness. And if you've tried this and your partner still doesn't respond or dismisses your needs, that's also data. Because no matter how kindly you frame your request, you still deserve to have your needs met. If they're not willing to meet you in mutual effort, the issue isn't your communication style, it's the emotional imbalance in the relationship. But most of the time, especially with avoidants who care and are simply afraid, this shift in tone and delivery makes a huge difference. It gives them room to hear you, to digest your request without shutting down, to try maybe imperfectly, but willingly. At the end of the day, it's not about managing their reactions. It's about mastering your expression. Because when you speak with warmth, clarity, and self-worth, you create a space where love has room to grow, even with someone who's still learning how to stay close. So the next time you feel the urge to vent, criticize, or make a demand, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, how can I turn this into an invitation? Because that one shift might be the key to opening a door that's been closed for far too long. Let's close this conversation with a truth that might feel both comforting and challenging. You don't need to disappear to be loved. You don't need to dilute your needs, mute your voice, or over-accommodate someone's distance in order to keep a relationship afloat. Especially not when you're in a relationship with someone who has avoidant tendencies. Throughout this video, we've unpacked 3 powerful shifts that create real connection with an avoidant partner, not through chasing, pressure, or silence, but through emotional structure, clear communication, and balanced boundaries. We started with the importance of setting a time-limited investment, getting honest about how long you're willing to wait without reciprocity. Then we looked at how to balance space with emotional rituals, because space alone doesn't build intimacy, shared rituals do. And finally, we explored the art of positive framing when expressing your needs so your words land as invitations, not ultimatums. Each of these shifts brings you back to your power. They allow you to create a dynamic where your avoidant partner feels safe enough to engage if they're willing. And if they're not, you still win. Because you've shown up with integrity, clarity, and emotional maturity. The final insight is this: true closeness with an avoidant partner comes not from tiptoeing around their fears, but from creating mutual emotional safety. That safety is built with consistency, not chaos, with truth, not silence, with calm boundaries, not desperation. So, if you've been holding your breath, waiting for closeness to magically happen through space alone, this is your invitation to stop waiting and start leading with grounded self-respect. You don't have to abandon your needs to make a relationship work. The right connection won't ask you to. If today's video helped shift something in your perspective, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment and share what landed with you most. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I release content every week to help you navigate attachment, boundaries, and healthy love with wisdom and clarity. Thanks for watching, and remember, you deserve a relationship that feeds you, not one that leaves you starving for scraps. Let's keep doing the work that brings real connection back to the table. I'll see you in the next video.